Hello friends, a big warm welcome to your very own channel Ammu&You, where I am Ammu and I am here to narrate a wonderful story to all of you. Robinson Crusoe, written by Daniel Defoe. We all must have read the story of Robinson Crusoe when we were small, but we would love to hear it any time again. I am sure of that. Long ago, there lived a boy called Robinson Crusoe. He wasn't at all interested in schools or book. All he could think of was becoming a sailor. As soon as he was old enough, he set off on his travels. A few years later, some of his friends planned a trip to Africa. "Will you come with us? Africa is full of riches, gold and ivory." "I'd love to come with you," Crusoe told them, and the men set sail. All went well until a storm blew up. Huge waves crashed into the mast and ripped the sails. Then there was a sickening crunch. "We've hit a sand bank," cried one of the men. They were forced to abandon the ship. But the storm was too much for the little boat. It was tossed around in heaving sea. Then suddenly a gigantic wave tipped it right over. Robinson Crusoe felt himself sinking. Desperately, he began to swim for the shore. After battling through the waves, he reached land. He emptied his pockets. He just had a knife, his pipe, and some tobacco. That was it. However, was he going to survive? The next day, when the storm had died down, Crusoe looked for his friends. All he could find were shoes and his hat. He was totally alone. "I think I'll make a raft to carry things back to shore." First, he tied 4 poles together with pieces of wood fixed across them. The raft was strong enough to stand on. Crusoe found lots of useful things on the wrecked ship: chests of food, barrels of rum, gunpowder, and guns. He loaded up the raft with as much as he could and paddled back to the beach. Crusoe sailed to and fro on his raft, rescuing tools, clothes, plenty of wood, and some sails. Suddenly, he heard a bark, and the ship's dog bounded up to him, followed by the 2 ship's cats. Crusoe was delighted. He was not alone after all. Soon, Crusoe made a home. He found a sheltered spot. Using the ship's sails, he built a tent. Then he built a bigger tent on top of it to protect it from rain. At the back of the tent, there was a sandy cave. If I made the cave bigger, I could use it as a storeroom. He dug out some earth and sand. Soon the cave was much bigger. Pleased with his wooden self-made spade, he made shelves, a table, and a chair. Crusoe soon got used to life on the island. Every morning he went hunting with his dog. He shot birds and wild goats for food. Sometimes he clambered over the cliffs, looking for birds' eggs to cook for breakfast. One day, while he was out exploring, he made an exciting discovery: ripe ears of corn. He picked them and kept the grain to sow in the spring. Every lunchtime he went home, cooked his food over a fire. He skinned the animals he shot and dried their skins to use later. Afternoons were too hot to work, so he would climb on into a hammock he had made and snoozed. After his nap, Crusoe stayed near his tent making things. Then when it got dark, he wrote a diary by candlelight. Time passed quickly. Crusoe explored every part of the island. There was a beautiful valley in the middle where orange trees grew and lots of wonderful vines with rich crops of grapes. It seemed like a paradise. Crusoe began making friends with the animals. He spent hours teaching a young parrot to speak. One day, accidentally, he shot a young goat. He took it home to nurse, and soon it became tame. Just before the rains, he planted his grains of corn, and soon he had a big, fine cornfield. But there was a problem. The birds thought the corn looked good too. Crusoe had to fire his gun to keep them away. He wondered what he should do to store the corn. Finally, he decided to make some clay pots. It wasn't easy, but soon after trying, he could make clay pots, bake them in fire, and finally he could store the corn in those pots. He ground it into flour first, and then he mixed it with water, shaped into the mixture into loaves, and cooked them over a tile, over a fire of hot ashes. One morning, Crusoe walked to a different part of the island. Looking out to the sea, he suddenly felt very lonely. I'll escape, he thought. He made a big boat out of a tree, and after weeks of hard work, when the boat was finished, he realized that the boat was too big and heavy to be carried to water. He just couldn't do that, and sadly, he found himself still stuck there. 4 long years had passed and the clothes were in rags. I must make myself some new clothes. Taking pieces of goatskin, he sewed himself a new pair of breeches, a jacket, and hat. He felt delighted, though he was looking odd. To complete his new outfit, he made an umbrella out of sticks and covered it with goatskin. That saved him from the rain and also the hot sun. I think I'll build another home, a lovely summer house in the valley. So he built a tent in the valley and planted trees around it and made a perfect home for relaxation during the summer months. One day he thought, let me explore this island more. And for that he needed another boat. He made a smaller boat and off he went to explore. On his return, he made a map and marked all the places he had discovered. He realized that now he didn't mind staying on the island after all. I am the king of the island now, he thought, as the years flew past. But then everything changed. One day, as Crusoe was wandering, he saw a footprint, and with his thumping heart, he ran back home. He was scared. He stayed there for a week, but finally he came back again to check the footprint. He checked and realized that it wasn't his. It was larger than his. He waited for the visitor to come again, but days, weeks, months passed and no one came. And one day he made a grim discovery. On the beach there were remains of a fire and human bones. Robinson Crusoe was terrified. He didn't want to live in the island anymore. But he couldn't do anything. Suddenly one morning, he spotted a fire on the beach. He crept closer to watch, and he saw a group of people dancing around a fire and feasting. Watching them, Crusoe felt uneasy. After the party got over, he saw the people jumping into their canoes and paddling away. Now Crusoe was worried. He strengthened the fence around his home and fixed guns all around. He planted trees to hide his house. Another 2 years went by with no sign of the visitors. Then one summer's day, Crusoe spotted 5 canoes packed with people nearing the beach. He crept closer. The men landed, built a huge fire, and began to roast chunks of meat. They had 2 captives with them. Suddenly he saw one of them hitting one of the captives over the head, and the other captive broke away from the group and started to run. 2 of the men chased after him. Crusoe gasped. He thought that he should help the running man. He followed the men until the main group was out of sight. He jumped out and hit one of the pair with his gun. The other man raised his bow, but Crusoe was too quick for him. He fired his gun and the man fell. The captive stopped running now and stared. Crusoe smiled at him. The captive smiled back. He followed Crusoe home and they had a large meal together. After that, the captive gave a huge yawn and fell asleep. The next day, Crusoe tried talking with his new friend. It was difficult. He gave him an English name. I'll call you Friday after the day we met. Friday didn't have any clothes with him, so Crusoe gave him some of his. Friday wasn't sure what to make of them. Crusoe's clothes had a style of their own. Crusoe was delighted now, for he had a friend to live with and talk to. Though Crusoe couldn't speak Friday's language, but Friday began to pick up English. Crusoe was very happy. One day they climbed the cliff and Friday spotted the mainland. That's my home. Let's make a boat and go there. Will your friends like me? Of course, said Friday. They will like you. Crusoe's huge boat had rotted, so they built a new one. But before they were ready, disaster struck. Friday saw 3 canoes sailing to the island. He ran to tell Crusoe. Crusoe and Friday loaded their guns and hid. As they watched the visitors dance around a captive on the beach, Crusoe raised his gun. Fire! He shouted to Friday. The men panicked. They fled to their canoes while Friday kept shooting. Crusoe ran to the captive, a sailor, and quickly untied him. The battle was over. They had left 2 canoes behind them. Crusoe found an old man lying in the bottom of the boat tied up. Crusoe helped him out, and Friday shouted with joy. It's my father, he cried. He rushed up to the old man and hugged him. Friday and Crusoe took the captives home. They gave them a good meal and let them rest. Crusoe gave the sailor food and weapons, and the man left agreeing to take Friday's father home. Only a week later, Crusoe saw a ship move close to the island, an English ship. He could hardly believe it. Another ship after so long. Feeling excited, he fetched his telescope. A small boat was coming ashore full of sailors, but 3 of them had their hands tied. The sailors took their prisoners to a tree and tied them up. Then they wandered off along the beach. Friday and Crusoe went to the beach to find out what was going on. The prisoners stared at Crusoe, and one of them said, I am the captain of that ship. My sailors mutinied. That's terrible, said Crusoe. Then he smiled. We'll help you to escape if you promise to take us to England. The captain nodded. Of course, he agreed eagerly. When the sailors came back from exploring the island, they had a shock. Crusoe, Friday, and the prisoners jumped out from behind some bushes and seized them. We'll spare your lives if you help us. The sailors agreed. They didn't have much choice. Later that night, the captain rowed out to the ship with a few men he could trust. They crept aboard very quietly and opened fire. Stop! We surrender. The next day, the captain rowed back to the shore. Come aboard, he told Crusoe. We leave for England today. On board, Crusoe put on his first English clothes for many years. Friday laughed when he saw them. Friday had decided to sail for England too. Crusoe took one last look at the island that had been his home for 35 years. Then the sailors hauled in the anchor and the ship set sail. Friday and Crusoe stayed friends for the rest of their lives. Both loved their life in London, but they never forgot their time on the island together. They had had such a wonderful and adventurous life. Children, living 35 years on an island all by oneself. Look at the strength, the fearlessness, and the creativity. How much he imagined, and he did everything to survive and make himself happy. What a great story of Robinson Crusoe. Let me know how you liked it. Write to me. Thank you for listening to this story. I'll come back again with another one. Till then, stay blessed and bye-bye.